You have received your rubric for your graphic design project. You've also received your typography sheet. Look at some of the examples a student used here. In addition, you created your fold book. This is a completed fold book that received a 100. This artist used wonderful typography and also thought about the placement of things. You notice that as you open that the Elements has one full page on the back of the cover, and she is covered form. The next page has color, and on the bottom, proportion. This image covers color and proportion. She has used accurate facial proportions. On the back cover, once you open it, you notice that an entire page is given to a principle. This one is rhythm. On the next page, we have a principle on the top and an element on the bottom, space and variety. This student used the repetition of circles to create a rhythm. As we turn the pages, we can see that there's a principle on one part of the page and an element on the other, and an image that explains those two things. Here we have contrast and value created in an image, texture and movement or motion to create an image. And here we are at the front of the book again, and you flip and you see the beginning element page and the cover of the elements page. This student received a 100 for excellent craftsmanship. You can see a lot of patience, care, time that was taken. This student also received a 100. This is a very different style. There's no one style that is perfect. Find your style. Here we have the principle of emphasis. This student is using markers, color pencils, shape and design. Notice how she separated the two images. Here, the page is sharing space with variety and form, contrast and value, excellent craftsmanship, pattern and color, rhythm and texture, line and balance, shape, and we are at the introductory page of the elements. Now there is the cover of the elements. Here we see our Exploring and Expressing Art's Elements and Principles rubric. You may have one for 7th or one for 8th grade. At the top, you see the Georgia Performance Standards that we are addressing with this project. You also see the 5 categories for which you will be assessed and the 4 areas of achievement for which you can achieve. There's advanced, proficient, emerging, and not evident. In addition, on the far right, you see a place for total points for each of the categories. You also see a list of the elements and principles. This is the rubric you're looking at right now. Notice there are 2 places for scores, student points and teacher points, and then a total point, which I will add up for you at the end. Here we have the back, where you're doing your written response in full sentences. Here you have a list of the elements and principles which you will have access to. This will help you as you make decisions about your composition and information in which you will include in your graphic design project. You will have access to visual aids for all of the elements and principles, not only in these handouts, but you can also use your technology to look up examples of line, shape, form, value, texture, and so forth. But you will also have these handouts in the room to look at as well. You will receive a handout that gives some ideas for composition arrangement. Composition in art is the way in which you arrange something. We can have a border, we can have quadrants, a grid with circles, columns. You could have a 2-page spread or a cutout window. You could have radial composition. There are so many different ways to organize the information that you will be using in your graphic design elements and principles project. In addition to receiving the handout to give you ideas about composition, you'll have access to this Push the Limits. It's your choice sheet. This handout helps you ask good questions the way an artist does about your artwork in order to improve it and to make it more interesting. For example, the first question, magnification. What would happen if you made it larger? You could apply this question to the text, drawing, or simply a shape that you've included on one of your images. The headings are magnification, reduction, substitution, addition, division, multiplication, rearrangement, reversal, adaptation, function, change, and material. You have obviously heard these words in other classes like science, math, geometry, and algebra. You currently have this handout. It's your typography sheet. Use this to have dynamic lettering. Here we have an example of a student who received a high grade. Good craftsmanship here. They've used an interesting stitching. They've also used different papers and paints and inks in order to do their texture and color and balance. They've used newspaper and additional pieces that they've added in. They've also put in fabrics that were interesting. They've used more additional forms to show shape and rhythm. They've used color pencil. The work here also received a high grade. You can see that the student took their time, used paint, added on additional pieces of cardboard to highlight the words. And you can tell they understood the information. There are some parts that are a bit messy, but then there's interesting parts, like this texture of rice and grapeseed sticks. Here we have someone who has a simple front design, uses grid paper to change the background, uses different types of pencil and papers to create their images. This is an awesome example of line and contrast. They actually use the inside of envelopes to create this layout. Excellent work. They've used labels in order to highlight the principles and elements. And here we are at the beginning. Excellent craftsmanship, simple but effective. As we open it up, we see wonderful work. Well-crafted examples of unity and texture. Colorful examples of color, variety, contrast, and shape. Everything is put down neatly and patiently. The way the paper is divided to share the information is also very engaging. Your eye can be led through the page to look at the different images. Here we see that she's done form and pattern by repeating and shading. And here we have proportion, a large versus a small fish. Another excellent cover with a diagonal typography placement, grid. This is our final one that we'll look at. The use of color and the craftsmanship, the ideas that are used in this are very eye-catching and well thought out. This received a high grade as well. As you can see, they're all very different. I hope yours is too.